Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Sim Racing in Focus podcast. It's a podcast where we talk about sim racing, as the name suggests, and we are up to episode number 6. So, if you've been with us since the start, thanks very much for continued support along the way. If you're new here, hopefully you'll stick around and like and subscribe and do all that good stuff. I'm your host, Dean Reddit. I am the owner and editor at a small startup website known as simracinginfocus.blog, where we produce blog style articles on sim racing and also this podcast. On today's episode, we will be chasing up with the missed race results from last week from our East Coast V8 Supercar Series, V8 Veterans, Logitech G Series, and another round of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. We've got quite a lot of results to get through tonight, so we'll leave the news topics alone, and then we'll head straight into an interview with Scott Rankin, who's one of Australia's leading commentators for a lot of iRacing leagues, and I'm sure a voice most people would know all too well. We'll get a chat in with him about how he got started and how he's managed to carve a road through commentary that's led all the way up into real-world racing events. So all that and probably a little bit more on today's show is iRacing week number 11. Let's go. Okay, to kick things off on our race results segment of the show tonight, we're going to be taking a look at East Coast V8s, who we've got 2 rounds to pick up. Round 6 at Hockenheim. Once again, it was James Scott and Dylan Rudd of Lobs Esport coming in first and second in qualifying, and followed up by Jordan Ross of Synergy Sim Racing in third. The race would basically follow suit. As much of the season has done with East Coast. James Scott continued to dominate the race from Dylan Rudd and Jordan again coming home in third. So they'd finish as they started. The race within the race is all about who's going to secure the golden ticket in the East Coast. For a long time now, it has been Sean McNamara and Jacob O'Reilly who have held down those spots. They've managed to do so despite still being under, constant threat from those behind. So it's not been a lopsided result in regards to the automatic qualifications through to Logitech G. It's been a good fight, but the boys have managed to hold it down there for the majority of the season. So that was Hockenheim. Hockenheim is just an interesting circuit, but not really for the V8 Supercar. Very difficult to pass apart from into the massive hairpin which always throws up plenty of car contact, but the remainder of the lap can be quite difficult there. So not going to cover that one in great detail. The round number 7 for East Coast V8s went to Bathurst. So once again, it's James Scott and Dylan Rudd 1-2. But it was Robert Gibbs from Evolution Racing Team who managed to get into the third place there. So the race would produce a similar finish as well, with James Scott, Dylan Rudd, Robert Gibbs also coming home in the podium. So once again, this has just been complete and utter dominance from James Scott. Dylan Rudd has had to settle for second, but the margin of victory was a lot smaller in this race. So Ruddy obviously a lot closer to James at Bathurst there, so the track played to his advantages. Robert was probably the surprise packet on the day, and he had really strong pace, managing to keep up with the front two for the majority of the race. Once again, the main battle from this one was really from who was going to come in fourth spot. It had Sean McNamara, Adam Briggs from Synergy Sim Racing, Thomas Freeman, Tom Freer. There was a blanket thrown over those 4 cars for the majority of the race, and you never really knew until the end. I think Briggs did, McNamara did a fantastic job of holding forth for the majority of the last stanza, but I think Briggs picked him at the line. But nevertheless, Sean is still sitting in P3 of the championship and holding down that all-important automatic exemption into the Logitech series. So he's also still joined by Jacob O'Reilly, who's in 4th place in the championship. But obviously the championship standings sees James Scott at the top. He's got a 51-point margin over his teammate Dylan Rudd in 2nd. And then it's a further 46 points back to Sean McNamara in 3rd, and 34 points back to Jacob O'Reilly in 4th. Connor Nixon rounds out the top 5 in the championship, a further 40 points behind. So the series is still technically alive heading into round 8, which will be the final round of the series. But James Scott has got a large mathematical advantage, and considering he has qualified on pole 7 rounds and won 7 rounds, he would certainly back him in for the championship. That series comes to a conclusion this week. We'll certainly get on board with those final results to announce who's made the field for the Logitech series. You don't like saying it, but it really just been a one-sided series there. But other than that, other than the 2 standouts, which has been James and Dylan, the rest of the field has been ultra competitive and certainly been the focal point for the broadcasters at least. So good, strong quality in amongst the mid-pack there. And we'll see 2 of them emerge for the automatic qualification spots. We'll move on now to V8 veterans. And this one has been the polar opposite to the East Coast, where this has been a heavily contested championship. We've also got 2 rounds to catch up with from the V8 veterans. First of all, round 9 went to Mid-Ohio for 56 laps. So interesting circuit, Mid-Ohio, one of those technical curvy ones. Difficult for overtaking, but generally a good fun one I find in the supercar. From qualifying, it was Ken Latta of Fishy Motorsports, again securing pole position. Michael Taliancic would be in 2nd from Altus Australia, and John Latham rounded out the 3rd spot on the grid. There was plenty of chaos early in this one with the start grid assembled through the final chicane S-bend, and naturally, as this one got underway, there was cars in the fence before they even reached the start-finish line. So early safety car brought out a lap 1 safety car, so a couple of early retirements. Ken Latta then on the race resumption had a control of the race for the majority. That was sort of helped by a little pit spin by Taliancic, who just gave Ken a little bit more of a gap. As the race sort of went on, it was really all down to the battle for the 3rd position between Darren Lobb, David Nash, and John Latham. But it would be Ken Latta who took the race win over Michael Taliancic, and Darren Lobb getting up to finish in 3rd. So once again, 3 names that have featured pretty prominently on the podium for V8 veterans. A final round. So round 10 would be the deciding round for the veterans championship, and it went to Mugello. Crucially, coming into this round, it was a slender lead at the top of the championship for Michael Taliancic, who just had a couple of points over Kenneth Latta, with only 1 automatic exemption being handed out. It was really going to come down to the last race and what's been a pretty epic back and forth between the 2 drivers all season. crucially for Ken Latta, he secured pole position, and with that, a bonus point. I believe it was a 2 or 3 point championship lead heading in. So the bonus point there to start the race off was crucial. He was then followed by Matt Van der Kraan and Scott Gamble in second and third. The other big news would be that series leader, Michael Taliancic, would start down in P19. So it was all to do for Michael heading into the race with a big deficit, at least on the starting grid. As the race progressed, Kenneth Latta dropped back a couple of spots in the opening laps, found himself running back in third and fourth. He was trying, at least on surface, looking like trying to keep the car clean because there was more bonus points on offer for a clean race. So had the one lap quali pace, but just didn't look like he had it for the race. And the race was a back and forth in the end between Darren Lobb and Scott Gamble. And it would end up going to Darren Lobb after a few safety cars and a bit of pit strategy got him in front of Scott later in the race after Scott had managed to get to the lead. But as the race started to wind towards its crescendo, I believe Kenneth Latta come home in fourth place. He needed to finish 2 spots in front of Taliancic and get a clean race bonus to secure the championship. And with 2 laps to go, Kenneth was in fourth. Michael Taliancic was in seventh at the time, so the championship sat with Kenneth. And then there was just an epic battle, 2-car battle between Michael Taliancic and Ricky Hyde, which is some of the best coverage I think I've seen in a long time. If there's 2 laps you need to watch from season 1 of 2024, it's definitely the final 2 laps of the final race of the V8 veterans. It was just high stakes stuff and 2 cars swapping positions side by side. Michael got the move done on Ricky with 1 lap to go, but then Ricky just really come back at him for the entirety of the final lap. Michael would hold on by 2/10 to claim 6th spot. And then the wait was sort of on to find out whether Kenneth had been able to produce a clean race at that stage. So the solitary point gained from the clean race bonus would have handed the championship to Kenneth. Otherwise, on a dead heat, Michael Taliancic would win on a countback. And to think after 10 rounds of racing that we would have such an epic conclusion and the call to go along with it, you definitely got to check it out. Fantastic stuff. Ultimately, I believe it come down to an incident point accrued after the checkered flag had dropped that cost Kenneth Latta the clean race bonus. I'm not 100% sure, but that's just if he got 1x for the race. So just incredibly tight and unlucky in some regards that he misses out on the championship first and foremost, but then also the automatic exemption through to Logitech G Pro Invitational Series. However, Michael Taliancic goes back-to-back championships in the V8 veterans. Just a really good series to follow this season, and a lot of good, a lot of high quality drivers, big turnouts every week. The guys are just killing it over there in terms of producing a good product, and certainly all the drivers seem to be lapping it up. So credit to everyone in the series. Congratulations once again to Michael Taliancic taking out the championship. On account back to Kenneth Latta, who certainly drove a phenomenal season. I believe Scotty Gamble might have rounded out third place finish in the championship standings after missing 1 or 2 rounds. Jumping on now to the Logitech series, qualification series, they had their round 3 results from Hockenheim as well. In qualifying, once again, Jared Filsell set the tone early and secure himself another pole position. Ultimately, this one was a quick watch for me. I didn't pick up too much from it, but the official results at the end of this round would be Phil Sell from Griffin Gardner from Forzan El Nabi in third. That's Jared 3 from 3. The final round of this series will be taking place within iRacing week number 12, so we'll cover that next week in better detail. Just touching on the qualification process, once again, it's the top 20 from this qualification process that will make the grid. We're really trying to keep an eye on those names that are hovering just outside the top 20, a couple of big names that might miss out. Looking at the championship standings here, we've talked a lot about Michael Taliancic and his automatic exemption through the V8 vets. He is sitting in P22. So if the series was determined now, he would miss the grid on the qualification series alone, but he has that automatic exemption ticket. So that's really important for him. Although he has one more opportunity to qualify. A couple of other names sitting just outside the top 20, Brian Borg, Michael Whiting, Den Hall, Sebastian Vandel, and Luke Mitchinson. They're just a few names for guys to keep an eye out on who need to have probably a result inside the top 20 in the final round to make sure that they can get themselves through. Just to wrap up this results segment before we get into tonight's interview, we'll just cover quickly off the third round of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. That went to Le Mans for 2 races. And again, we're really just tracking how our Aussie drivers are doing in this series. In race 1, it was pretty solid outing for the boys. Jordan Caruso managed to finish in P6. Cooper Webster managed to come home in P8. So again, just a draft train, as you can imagine, around Le Mans circuit. The Red Bull cars were just exceptionally strong out in front. Sebastian Job would go on and win another race here in a series that he's fast proving too good. With race number 2, the main race, it would be a reverse grid for the top 8, which seen Cooper Webster on pole position. Jordan Caruso would start P3. On the start of the race, Caruso got through into second spot. So we had Webster, Caruso 1-2. And of the 6-lap race, it went that way for about 5 3/4 laps. They're so close to an Aussie 1-2. But Cooper, much to his credit, got the job done and got his Oracle Red Bull racing car over the line in first place. Jordan Caruso on the dying stages of the lap got shuffled from second back to fourth and missed the podium, which was just, again, with other cars working to draft off each other, just, not a whole lot Jordan really could do in that situation, and just gut-wrenching. It would have been such a good race meet for those guys if they had to finish 1-2, but first and fourth, so not a bad result at all. The win gets Cooper Webster up into 7th in the championship, and Jordan Caruso is 8th in the championship, and they've got it's 112 points gap between Sebastian Job in first place in the championship, back to Cooper in 7th. So once again, Sebastian's looking very dominant through 3 rounds. It's only a 7-round series. This is the creme de la creme. This is for $200,000 US. So it is a big, big series, but it's fast going the way Sebastian Job unless divine intervention kicks in. That is going to do it for our race recaps. It was a quick fire one tonight. We had plenty to catch up on. And really the talking point is just the amazing finish to the V8 Veterans season. Once again, Michael Taliancic gets the championship, gets the golden ticket, goes through the Logitech G Pro Invitational Series. We'll be picking that up when that does kick off in the new iRacing season. So we'll probably stop covering the V8 Veterans once that kicks off. And we'll just we'll just follow a couple of the key series. We've also got V8 Supercars Online Premier Series kicking off this weekend. So Sunday, March the 30th kicks off. We'll start covering that series. So a couple of big ticket items on the Australian iRacing calendar commence in the not too distant future. We're not going to get into the updates regarding the new iRacing patches, new iRacing build coming out, but lots of stuff to get excited for there, which we'll get into more detail in probably next week's episode. But obviously everyone's aware of the rain, new tracks going to free content, so lots of stuff to cover. That's why we're not going to try and do it in tonight's episode. We might just have in our downtime or down week, we'll have a better chance to go into some better detail on those topics. So that's going to do it for the drive-by segment and our race recaps this week. So now we'll get straight into our interview with one of the voices that is synonymous with the Australian iRacing scene and just an all-out good guy and hard worker in Scotty Rankin. So I hope you enjoy our conversation about what it's like to be a commentator in iRacing. Okay, everyone, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the Sim Racing in Focus podcast the man with the voice that is fast becoming associated with the Australian iRacing scene, not to mention a former teammate of mine, Mr. Scotty Rankin. Welcome, mate. Thanks for giving up your time, and how are you doing?
So a bunch of people will be listening along going, oh, that's not your usual tones. That's not normally how you work. You're 100% right. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, and that makes me feel a little bit sad because as we're recording this, the next round of the Logitech qualifying series is actually tomorrow night, and I'm going to have to miss it because I know that I'm not going to be able to give my best. So, it's been a big year. I'm excited, disappointed this week, but hey, it is what it is. It's got to happen at some point, right?
That's right, but I'm glad you're sacrificing Logitech to come out and talk to me instead.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is. Yeah.
Oh, mate, that's terrific, and yeah, I'm sure we'll get into a lot about what you're up to of late. But you've obviously got a very busy schedule coming up this year. But now that we know that your voice is synonymous with the Australian iRacing scene, what do you prefer to go with now? Is it the Ray Rabs Warren of sim racing or the Tony Gregg of sim racing? What are we comparing you to these days?
I mean, I've had a lot of comparisons actually over my time thus far. Like I'm really happy carving out my own path. I don't like the comparisons to other people. Just more so, it means all of a sudden I've got to be someone. I've got to be a particular voice, and I'm really, really happy with what I'm putting out. But I think my favorite one is actually Lee Diffie. I've heard that so many times, and probably my least favorite one is Daniel Gray. So there you go.
Well, I did hear you talking about the Daniel Gray comparison. Or was that in a post? I can't remember. But yeah, that was a good, funny conversation you had about that.
Yeah, that's. I want to say a big shout out to Mez because he's probably the one that come up with the best one out of all of those that have been kicking around. And it was the Wish.com Daniel Gray. So it wasn't just Daniel Gray, Wish.com Daniel Gray. So we're taking it to another level. Thanks, Mez.
Yeah. Oh dear, I do that. That's pretty good, but I think that's a bit savage on you, to be honest. I think you've got a good pitch for the commentary duties. But anyway, obviously we are here to talk about your journey, I guess, as a commentator on iRacing. And I'm sure a lot of people will recognize it, or recognize your voice, but we'll get to know you a little bit better. But I guess just, real general start. When did sim racing start for you? Just sim racing as the hobby?
As a hobby, I've played I was actually sort of thinking about this over the last couple of days, knowing that this is probably one of the questions you're going to ask. Sim racing for me, I've always been interested in racing. Anyone who's probably listened along to our podcast knows I've been racing motocross bikes since the time I was 5. So Dad was leading club championships in the endurance, the Ironman category. He had an old DT 200, and I can remember that was probably the bike I had my first ever ride on anything motorcycle related. And Dad, obviously sitting behind me, holding everything up, and I'm just squirting away at the throttle, which was a blast. And I remember that thing in particular just because it had that real ting ting ting, like proper enduro. The KDMs like currently get a similar sound, but it's not quite the same. So that's probably my first memories. My first ever time on a motorbike, I flattened a tree. Just getting more and more. Yeah, so we had like 3 small trees along our side, right next to our side fence, and I was coming around the corner faster and faster and faster. And my mother's looking at me and getting more and more freaked out. She still tells bits and pieces of this story to this day. My brother's pottering around because we both got Pee-wee 50s for Christmas that year. And I got ballsier and I got ballsier and I got ballsier, and then I hit the tree. And that's where the ballsiness stopped.
It might interest you to know that my daytime job is I'm a consulting arborist for council. Part of what I do is issue fines for non-compliant tree removals, but I can't say I've ever investigated one being removed by motorbike before.
Look, the tree was probably, I think, 12 months old, so it wasn't a tree, it was like a shrub. It was like a little so that's the only reason a Pee-wee 50 would run down a tree. But yeah, no, that's where it started. So that was 1997. I won the Aussie long track title in the year 2000, which was the last year Pee-wee 50s were eligible for the long track title nationally for a competitive class title. In 2001 they moved them to a non-competitive title, so I can say I am the longest standing Australian long track title champion. Is a really cool, unique claim to fame, which is obviously completely and utterly garbage because it means nothing these days. But yeah, and then from there we sort of dwindled off. Mum and Dad ran motocross clubs they're still running them.
Okay.
I started getting into probably sim racing. I met I can still remember, I think I was looking up the games the other day, IndyCar 2 on a Windows 95 machine, and it was a demo. That came in like those. I think it was on a floppy disk, actually.
Oh my God.
And of course, we didn't have wheel and pedals back in those days, so I'm racing around ovals, and the only 2 tracks the game had were, I want to say Charlotte. I think it might have been Charlotte, but I do remember Laguna Seca, and it was literally numpad controls was how you drove the thing. So, and then the demo ran out as soon as you ran out of fuel, the pit stops didn't work, and that's where the demo sort of ended. So you could run as far as 1 tank of fuel. Fast forward, probably about 2011, I started getting into the Formula 1 games because I've always sort of watched, been a fan of racing. Once you grow up with it, you're sort of stuck, you're a fan. Love the strategy with those style of Formula 1 games, and sort of was a background fan. I think I got my first wheel about 2015. And then I got seriously into iRacing right at the start of COVID. I was watching some really, really good friends of mine to this day in oval racing in the States. And I just loved the look of oval racing straight away. I looked at it. There was strategy, there was tire wear, there was fuel strategy, there was long distance races. And it just hooked me. Like I watched this guy for a week, and I bought iRacing. I was like, man, all I want to do is spot for you. That's all I wanted to do. Like driving was cool, but I was like, I just want to learn that way. And that's how I got into iRacing. Fast forward probably six to 9 months after that, I was doing some endurance series racing, and one of the guys that I was racing with said, one of the groups I'm working with is looking for some more commentators. I've been doing esports commentating, starting with League of Legends since 2014. I've done a whole bunch of stuff.
We'll get
in the
into
Australian.
that.
Yeah,
We'll get there.
there's gonna be some points in there, I'm sure. But
You're robbing me of my questions.
and then he just said, "Oh yeah, come along." I spoke to the guy by the name of Matthew Rodriguez, who runs Flat Out Racing Network. That got me a foot in the door. I'd never done racing commentating before. I picked up a microphone. I think it was 10. We were racing at my home track, and Mum and Dad had run this inter-club series between 5 clubs in northern New South Wales. And this is like my only introduction to commentating before I got into esports stuff. I picked up the microphone. I said, the commentator had to go get lunch. And I said, do you mind if I commentate because I was always picking up the microphone. You'd win a class at the end of the day. I was always thanking like 5 or 10 different people at the end of the race. I was the only kid to do it. And then I did this one race, and people were running to the fence, and they were really, really interested. This is me knee high to a grasshopper. Don't know much about the world of commentating. I'm just doing it because I think it looks cool, and that's sort of the origin story of me. And then yes, Flat Out Racing Network turned into some oval series. Started off with trucks. I got really big into the IndyCar side of things. Loved the IndyCars. Loved the pack racing. Met a bunch of people, and then the rest is history, really.
Absolutely. That's a pretty long history though. And one thing I noticed is you're saying you got your first wheel in IndySim racing in around about 2015, but didn't come over to iRacing till the COVID time, so 2020, 2021. So what were you doing in that period of time on the sim?
Just Formula One, just solo racing Formula One. I think out of everything we ever did, I think I only ever did like 2 or 3 online races, and I just didn't like it. Wasn't interested in it. To me, the strategy. Whenever I saw the online racing stuff, it was short races, and I just looked at that and went, "No, thank you. I'm good. I'd rather." I always did the full distance races on Formula One. Like the half distance races, not interested in them.
Yeah, I was similar. I picked it up. That's pretty much where it started for me too, with the Formula One games. Just getting into career mode. I was never much of an online racer, and I thought because I didn't do that iRacing wasn't going to be for me. Like that's how I sort of at the time I didn't view online racing as my thing. I just liked the career mode and grinding away on that side of things. So very similar start, at least for us. You touched on it briefly just there, but you did come into iRacing in the COVID era, we could call it now, I suppose, with how the boom started. And you touched briefly on how you got your first gig commentating. So could flesh that out. How did that all come about? Was that something that someone asked you to try and do, or did you go seeking that?
Actually, it's just triggered. There was some small amount of online racing I'd actually done, and it was on Project Cars 2 on computer, which I'd completely forgotten about because it was just so insignificant in terms of things. But I joined a really small community. I think there was 15 of us. I think the most number of cars we ever had on track was about 15. But we did just fun style races. The whole point was if anyone ever fell off the track or had an issue, we'd all immediately stop, wait for them to catch back up, get going again. And then one of those guys was like, "Oh, you've done commentating before," because I'd talked about it a few times. Do you want to have a crack at this? Did that, and there's a few guys that are still within the sim racing world in Australia that actually know me from those days. One of them is actually Braden Sagassa, out of the 1-9 crew. Yep. So I actually know him from, I want to say 2017 was when we first met. Could be 2016 actually. So I just did that for a couple times for fun. I think I only ever did like 5 commentating things, but I was streaming the whole time. I was just having fun for myself, really. And then some of those guys, I met up with them. I was just doing an online racing on iRacing, and was just doing a NASCAR truck league. And the guy went, Scott Rankin, you used to run in this league in this group with this group of people. You used to do some commentating. Oh boy, yeah, man, you do a bunch of endurance racing these days, don't you? Yeah, I do. Come on, jump this Discord. And that kick-started everything. And then it was the same guy that Warren, and I can't remember his last name, but his first name's Warren, invited me to come do some endurance racing with them. That we started off in, I think it was a 90-minute endurance league in the Porsche 919 and whatever the other one, the Audi that sounds like a truck. And all the GTE cars.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the old LMP ones. And then he just said at the end of one of those, I remember you used to commentate. Flat Out Racing Network's looking for some new commentators. They've got some new gigs coming up. They don't have enough commentators to fill those slots. Jumped across, shuffled around, did some stuff for them. And yeah, that got me started. I was really, really enjoying it. Like, when you come from a racing back, like, esports is good. I love talking esports, and I've always had a real big knack for it. When anything I've done with commentating, I've always succeeded quite well with it. But racing just felt right. Whereas the others had to work really hard to get an understanding of it. It got boring really quickly. Racing doesn't do that for me. So it was very natural. One step led to another step, led to another step, basically. So
yeah, well, when you think about commentary, motorsports is one sort of broadcast that really depends a lot on it, especially like endurance racing, stuff like that, keep people engaged. So it's not a surprise to hear you say it comes a little bit more naturally. But since you did bring it up, let's touch a little bit on, before we get right into your motorsport commentary and stuff you're doing on iRacing. Let's get a little bit of a brief history of your other esports commentary work that you have been doing. You mentioned at the top of the show League of Legends, things like that. How did you get involved in that, and sort of how long were you doing that type of commentary for?
Oh, I think I could. There's an American friend of mine that I made that actually came over for my wedding, and the first ever commentating gig I ever did was me and him were just watching League of Legends Worlds that year. I mean, at the end of Worlds finished, and we were both just like, we looked at each other and went, "You and I can do this. This is so easy. Like everything they're doing is stuff that we talk about all the time. Like we could absolutely do this." And we just ended up just doing it one day. We're just like, screw it, just gonna have a crack, just gonna do it on a stream. And all of a sudden, I think for the first time ever, I hit double-digit stream viewers on Twitch. And this would have been, it's either 2014 I got to go over to New Zealand, which is too far along. So it'd have to be like, I reckon, November 2012, I think. If it wasn't November 2012, it was 2013, because it had to have been 2013, I think, just because I'm reasonably certain I've been doing commentating for 10 years at the end of last year. But the dates are a little bit sketchy for me. I've got one of those brains that'll either really well remember specific details of specific things happening, or I completely forget it. There's no in between. So yeah, it just started, and then there was a forum that was getting around, and I'd made a few friends, and they all said, "Yeah, come join this forum." And the first day I was on that forum, they were like, "Oh, we're looking for commentators to do this." Screw it, I'll give it a crack. Well, within 2 or 3 weeks, I had people that were above going, "Come sit in. We want you to come listen. We want you to come. We want to take you under a wing. We want to teach you a few different bits and pieces. We think you've got some sort of talent for it." I went, "Sweet." Just sort of followed along. But I was very young. 10, 11 years ago, I was very early 20s. And at that point in time, undiagnosed neurodivergence. So I was having a lot of problems relating to people online. And in particular was just not reading situations very well, and I had a very vindictive streak at the time. So whenever something didn't go well, I tried to burn all bridges, break all contact, those sorts of things. So what had happened is I go through a cycle, which is whereby I build up a relationship, do really, really well with a certain person, find a value that I didn't agree with that person, and then that's it, I'm out to destroy them from now on. And I burned so many bridges in young me, just burned so many bridges doing those sorts of things, and I wasn't doing it for fun anymore. And then I quit League of Legends. That's it. I've had enough. I'm not doing it very well. But before that, I got to go over to New Zealand and commentate their national finals with a specific group, which was really, really cool. That was just an experience like you wouldn't believe. I was managing an esports team for a very short span. I think it was only about 2 or 3 months. I went to a couple of events on their dollars, which was very, very cool. Opened my eyes to a whole bunch of different things. And then I sort of cycled around through a bunch of different esports after that. Touched some Counter-Strike, didn't really like Counter-Strike. Was always interested in COD, but couldn't commentate it because I couldn't get the call-outs. Liked Hearthstone because I liked a lot of the strategy, so did a little bit of that. I've done... If it's out there in terms of an esport form, I've probably had a crack at it. Probably my biggest name events and people that know me the most is probably, I still have people to this day contacting me going, "Oh, you're still that guy that used to commentate Smite in Australia." Yeah, that's me. So that was really, really cool. So got to work for Hi-Res Studios, I think in about 2016, 2017, just doing their Challenger level stuff. It wasn't cash paid, but it was, I got big reimbursements in terms of in-game currency. And met a lot of, again, really, really interesting people, but just failed to manage those relationships properly. So,
okay, yeah. One of the sort of things I like to do when talk to people such as yourself is try and figure out a way where, if someone was out there that, might be thinking they'd like to do commentary as a bit of a, whether it's for fun or anything else, that they might pick up things from these types of interviews with people such as yourself. So hopefully as we go along, we might try and ask some more probing questions and sort of get your thoughts and any advice that you can hand down that people might look. Certainly myself, in my experience, I hear people always popping up with some questions, thinking
absolutely.
that they might like to try it. And
I mean, just to give you a discussion point to start off with, one of the first things I can say is, even if you think you're terrible at it, even if in your head you think I still think I'm bad, by the way. I really, there are a lot of glaring things in my head that I think I'm still doing very, very wrong, and there's a lot of things I need to tune up, and a lot of things that I think I need to work on, and I still have people coming to me telling me, it's a really, really bad concept that I get in my brain called imposter syndrome, whereby I just, because there was of a whole bunch of things that happened in my younger life whereby people were telling me bits and pieces and they were being disingenuous, I just didn't have that ability to read it. I struggle accepting compliments these days. But one of the biggest things I can tell you is, no matter what you think of yourself, get out there and have a crack, first and foremost. Because as soon as you flip that recording on and you record something, you've made a start, number one. Number two, you've got something to go back and have a look at and start reflecting on and start improving on straight away.
Yeah. All right, I'm back on track now. I remember my question. I was going to say, what we see now on the broadcast, the Scotty Rankin we see now is sort of approaching, I know we're always learning and always getting better, but you're certainly a very good commentator for iRacing and esports in Australia right now. Do you think a lot of those core skills were developed when you were bouncing around, in these other esports leagues prior to getting here? Or do you think that even just in the time that you've been on iRacing, you've actually come a long way?
Being on iRacing has tested me in different ways. With esports stuff, I never had the ability to be an analytical or color commentator. I was always 5 to 10 minutes behind what was happening within the games. Particularly Counter-Strike really frustrated me because all the play-by-play roles, there's not really a play-by-play role in Counter-Strike. There is sort of a loose one. So it was very analytical, and I just couldn't grasp it. Didn't understand the game, didn't understand the call-outs, didn't understand A, B, and C. So it taught me a lot of skills about relying on the people around me. One of the biggest ones that I can sort of, if people are listening and they're going and then they're watching my broadcast or they're watching anyone's broadcast, one of the big things I'd say straight on is learn how to hand off. And that's as easy as going to somebody else with a question or having a specific tone. You'll find a lot of the commentators that I work with naturally know when they're next to pick up in the conversation, because I'll end either on a downward tone or I'll ask them a question. That's one of the biggest, easiest ones that you can start off with.
Okay. Yeah, just reading cues. Yeah, and believe it or not, I've actually done a little bit myself too back in the day. But I was just, dare I say it, I was kind of like the Mizomo on the broadcast that I was doing, where I'd just sit there and wait to be chucked to. Yeah, that's cool. You've just given me awesome one here to ask you. You talked about color commentary. Usually there's two people in a commentary booth. Talk about just sort of clarify the different roles, because obviously there's a lead and then there's a second person, but what are they called in commentary terms? And give us a little bit of understanding about, certainly from your perspective now, like you're commentating a couple of the bigger leagues. So we might hear from one or two voices, but yeah, give us a bit of an understanding about what is going on in the commentary booth when you're calling the race.
So the role stuff, we'll probably start with that because that's quite easy, and that's probably one of the big basics that will help people further their own careers and how they're thinking about things. Is there's generally two commentators of the same style only work in specific circumstances. Speedway is one of them. Dirt track racing, you need two play-by-plays, and that's because the action is happening so thick and so fast. Whilst one is taking a breath, the other one's doing the play-by-play. So that is the only time realistically that sort of commentary style of two play-by-plays works together. But they're both also analytical or color commentators of some degree as well. So realistically, speedway commentating is one of the hardest things to do because you've got to have a complete skill set. It's not just the quick time, Dean's laid down a 51.585, a 51.58. That's easy to do. Everyone's seen that. They can mimic that, right? So know your roles. Lead, obviously, all lead means is just that you're in charge of going from one segment to the next. You're generally going to be aware of your time signatures. So, for example, and I'm really, really bad at keeping to time, by the way. It's something I have to physically focus on and work at constantly or I miss it. So you'll know we've got 90 seconds for an interview, and you'll just have a rough estimate of how long that interview's been going for. You'll go maybe 3 questions for a 90-second interview. And you've got to shuffle through 5 of those in whatever the time span is. So that's normally a lead. The lead will know where they're going. Now, your lead will also have another role as well. Generally, it's your play-by-play role. And what we mean by play-by-play is you're saying what the action is. So if you've ever heard from football, it'll be hands off to the fullback. The fullback's going for the kick downtown. That's a play-by-play. You're literally reading the action as it happens. And the play-by-play is there to tell you what's going on, but add to it. If I'm just telling you what's happening on the screen, I'm not giving you any value, right? I'm not giving you some flavor. Part of the reason everyone comes and watches, I think, my commentary is because I'm adding an energy to it. I'm also adding my own little bit of flavor, communication, a bit of puns, a joke here and there, and I'm having fun with it. That's, I think, one of the biggest redeeming features about my commentary is the fun that I'm having with it. That can be somebody else's. Somebody can match my style perfectly and better at it. Go nuts. If you think that's the style for you, absolutely go nuts. Smash me out of the water. Make me improve. 100% do that. So, that's play-by-play in a nutshell is what's going on the screen plus a little bit more. Your color is about adding a little bit more of that side value. It's sort of expanding on that plus more role from a play-by-play, and analysis is really a lot more of the technical details. So a color is going to describe the situation really, really well, but the analyst is going to back it up with numbers and statistics. They're going to have a plan. They're going to know, I've done the numbers on these fuel. This guy's scheduled to pit in about 5 minutes time. Maximum, he can get to 7.5 minutes off of this tank, but he's not going to go really any further than that. He's going to have to do a lot of work to do that, and we haven't seen that far. Furthest I'd see him go is about 6 minutes. Yeah. So that's more of the analyst. He'll be looking at wing angles, discussing those sorts of things. The driver color will talk to the drivers a lot more and do some more personal interviews and those sorts of things.
Yeah, because we would normally see if someone was starting out, you would maybe slot into that secondary role as a natural starting spot if you were looking to get into commentary, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's I would say it's really difficult because play-by-play and lead is more important. To get that right. So it's definitely very difficult to get your timings and those sorts of things if you've got a broadcast mind, if you understand the flow of things. If you're great at running meetings in a corporate sense, you probably will be quite good at lead because you keep everyone to time, you keep them to signature, or you'd be a better broadcaster because that's all you're doing basically is keeping people on track and pointing at where the action's going. Yeah, but I would say, see, I'll get into things from the play-by-play perspective. For me, I find that easier. It's just natural. It just comes. So for me, I find that easier. But for iRacing, definitely the analytical is probably a way to come in, sit there. If you're really good with strategy, you can make a good commentator.
Yeah. I just remembered just the stuff that I did, getting comfortable with it. I enjoyed it a lot, but I never really wanted to do the lead side of it. It was just... Yeah, even though I'd done it for a couple of iRacing seasons, I was never tempted to do the lead. I was comfortable in that secondary role. So it does take a certain type of personality to do.
It's interesting because one of the criticisms of my early commentary career is that I had an ego on me, and I never necessarily thought of it as an ego. I just thought, I represented things, but some people say that it takes an ego to be a lead commentator. I can see how people would reference me in that light, but I don't think that. I think does it take some strength and personality? Probably a little bit, because you've got to have that control. You've got to know your flow. But I think anyone can do it if they're set up correctly. Strength
and personality is probably hitting the nail on the head there. It takes a bit of confidence to project your voice and lead in that manner. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter whether it's commentary or, like you said before, leading a business meeting. It's delivering with conviction type thing.
One of the biggest tips I actually got very, very early on in my career, and this is back to the esports days, it doesn't matter if you're wrong, just sell it. If, for example, let's talk NASCAR because that's very, very easy. Most NASCAR pit stops, you're going to take tires, right? Because the tires fall off. I can sit here and say to you, Dean, oh man, this guy right here, he's not going to take tires at his next pit stop. You know why? Because he's going to save 2 seconds in that pit stop. He could lose 20 seconds over there, but you think he's not going to do it now, don't you?
Yeah.
It's just, seconds. You're just going to sell it. Just confidence. Even if you're wrong, if you think you're wrong, turn off YouTube chat. 100%. Don't watch chats. Watch that later for a little bit of criticism. whilst you're commentating, like that can impact your confidence so much.
Yeah, I used to remember getting, if you were on commentary and you said something and you went, "Oh no, that's a mistake," or "Sorry, no, that's not what I meant." Yeah, I used to get the producer in the background going, "Stop apologizing. No one knows you're wrong." Little things like that. So it's just like, yeah, just say it and go with it. But not that you're wrong much at all. It's just, yeah, little
Oh, I'm
quirks
wrong all
like
the
that I
time.
picked.
Ask my wife. My wife will tell you.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's really interesting getting into that sort of technical side of it. Just, you know, I touched on right at the top of the show that we've been previously been teammates, but this year, is it fair to say that you've had like a bit of a change where you were commentating and racing, and now you're really locked in on the commentary? Is probably maybe the main thing that you're doing on iRacing now. Is that
Um,
fair to say?
yeah, I probably over the last 8 months, I was starting to have a lot of flashbacks to my younger days, whereby I was getting really, really angry, and I don't want to do that with racing because I just have such a passion for it. I think it comes largely from comes back to those early days where I said my parents are running motocross clubs. At one stage, we were running 3 clubs at once, and I had to pitch in. I had to help out with those duties, so I know what it goes into running clubs. I know what goes into running sports, and I could see myself becoming the worst kind of person that wasn't being beneficial to anyone around me. I was very grumpy all the time. One of the reasons was that I was struggling with burnout just about near constantly. The racing commitments and the standard that I wanted to be at. I'm quite good at analyzing what I can do. I'm not quite good at living up to my own expectations and my own standards that I set for myself. So the standards becoming too high for what I demanded of myself. I wasn't getting the best out of me, and I looked around and just went, the best possible thing I can do right now is take a break, because I can just, all I'm seeing is the negative, and it's inflecting my commentary, and I'm loving my commentating
Yeah,
right now. So I looked at it and I just went, look, I mean, my wife says this to me all the time. You're picking up too much. You're taking too much on. You need to step back and see what you can do. And I did that. I wanted to have a crack at the Road to Pro series in NASCAR trucks this year, but even with my schedule last year, that just wasn't a reality. That wasn't something that realistically I could sit down and do with confidence. And if I'm not competing at my best level, if I'm not giving it my all, I'm not going to do it. So I had to pull back from that. And then I was like, right, well, maybe I'll just work on my I rating. Did that for about 3 or 4 days and just went, no, this is making me worse. And then I just went, you know what? I'm just going to take a break. I have to take a break, because there
yeah,
is, if I keep at what I'm doing right now, I won't be commentating in 6 months. I won't be doing anything to do with iRacing in 6 months. I'll be sitting in the corner. I'll be lonely. I'll be miserable, and I'll be a negative person. And that's not who I want to be.
yeah. So yeah, you can definitely you definitely hear stories and can relate to people that get that iRacing burnout, whether it's commentary, working league admin, or just racing itself. It definitely catches a lot of people off guard, because it's just the nature of being a competitor. Really, it's like, there's plenty of resources available for you to go that little bit deeper, work that little bit harder, sacrifice that little bit more time, stay up that little bit more later. But then it all leads to burning you out quicker. And yeah, getting a grasp on how to make that all balanced is skill in itself. And yeah, I can certainly relate to that as well. Just trying to take on, I doing the podcast, and you're doing one as well, and that part of that's just getting some enjoyment back into it, because
That's it. That
talking.
is such a big key about why I sat down and wanted to start. I've wanted to start a podcast for. I've done so many different esports podcasts. I've been on League of Legends ones, Smite ones. I think I was on a Hearthstone one for a small period as well, and I just love I love talking to people about their passions. And since I've come to iRacing, probably the first year and a half I was here, I was like, I mean, this is interesting, but didn't have the passion for it. Now I just want to talk to people I just want to sit down, have a beer with someone, and talk racing, for even side topics to racing for two
Yeah,
hours. It's not serious. It's about all the aspects that go on with it. And to me, every single person I've come across has a story. It does not matter if they're even people I've come across in the real world. There are so many stories like my parents have pressed on to me about the guy that shows up every single week, goes down to turn one and flag marshals at turn one, and he loves that because he's just seeing the kids having fun, and there's a story in that. And it could be that he lost a kid. He lost a kid to racing, and he's still showing up because it knew what it meant to his kid. So this is his way of still attaching. There are so many stories like that that just don't get told, and not enough people are aware of, and we get tied up in this competitive mindset without wondering who the person is on the other side of the competitive mindset. So I just love telling stories, man, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and you, I've mentioned it before, but my background, I suppose, with sports is I used to play a lot of cricket down in Sydney, and I remember we used to have a sports psychologist come along. Usually, just come along in the off season for a couple of sessions because everyone was gunning for 11 state contracts or 20 state contracts, and you got 20 odd first grade teams with 11 players each. You do the math, there's not a lot on offer. And so a lot of people, cricket, I suppose, is a sport where you have more failures than what you do have successes. So your highs are incredibly high, but you're also low a lot of the time as well. So a lot of the time they would talk about enjoying teammate success as opposed to tying up failure all in your own performance, if that makes sense. So I think reaching out, talking to other people, hearing about their success stories is a way that I'm continuing on that piece of advice.
Damn, why does everyone have cricket? What is it with cricket and racing? Everyone's just super cricket. John Van Rees into cricket, massively into cricket. He's got some really, really interesting stories around cricket. Mez, myself, I think it was Jake Burton we're actually talking to recently. I can't remember. But just about everyone's to do with cricket, and it's the same sort of thing. Like you're 100% right. I've been really, really lucky, I guess, in that it's sort of difficult because if we hadn't have moved around as much as we have, maybe we'd be a little bit more set up in life and whatnot. But at the same time, I've got so many experiences to fall back on because I've played cricket in Grafton, Armidale, two separate clubs in two separate parts of Melbourne and two different comps in Melbourne. The same thing on the Central Coast. I've played for three different teams on the Central Coast. One of them was playing in Newcastle. The other two were in the Central Coast comp, and now I'm out here at Griffith. So I've gotten this really unique opportunity through both motor racing and through cricket as well to meet so many different people. One of the stories I really love telling is that it's so unique to be in the minority at a cricket club. I got to be at a cricket club whereby I was one of three white guys at the cricket club and everyone else was subcontinent. And I love that. I love that experience because I learned so much more. I learned some of the language. There are still some subcontinental guys now that I say tike and shabash shabash, which is basically just good job, well done. Those sorts of things. And it's really, really, I can now relate to people at different clubs and different walks of life just from, how I've been impacted and influenced, which is just so cool. So cool.
Yeah. We're definitely going off on a tangent here, but I got one more cricket thing for you. Which clubs were you at on the coast in Newcastle? Because I played a lot of cricket there myself too.
Doyleson YE was my first cricket club. I played for Brisbane Water, and Brisbane Water was going through this evolution at the time of they didn't have a first grade squad. So there was a lot going on, and I ran into some really, really bad personalities, and it just wasn't... It was that hyper-aggressive, hyper-competitive focus. And they just weren't good for me to be around, so I needed to switch clubs. And then the last 2 years I was living on the Central Coast, I played for Southern Spirit as well. So,
wow, we've definitely crossed paths.
Are you kidding?
I tell you right now, I was playing for the entrance definitely when all the just after the mergers had taken place. So
probably not. So I was on the Central Coast from... we left Melbourne October 2017. So 2017-18 season, I was with Doyleson YE, which means 2018, 2019, 2019-20, and 2021, I was with Brisbane Water. and then 21-22 and 22-23, I was with Southern Spirit.
There you go. Well, I finished up in 2018 when my first was born. So
okay, so yeah, we did cross
I was
paths. There
there
you
for 5 years. I was with the entrance before that. So there you go. We've definitely crossed at some point in time. So that's interesting. All right. Well, let's get back on track before we lull everyone to sleep. Yeah, no. I guess we'll move up to where you are now with your commentary. Give us a bit of an idea of what your weekly schedule looks like, because at least appears the amount of iRacing that I get to watch, you're almost on everything now. So talk about what series are you working with? Like how many nights a week are you on commentary?
I think I can actually confirm everything that I've got planned for this year now. Because there was a few announcements that we're sort of waiting on. So obviously the two that are sort of already done for the season, or actually the three that I've already done so far for the year is Premier Endurance League, which is GT3, GT4. So I'm doing both of those, which is every second Sunday. I'm also just finished up with V8 Veterans, which was really kind of heartbreaking, but I needed to do a change and something different needed to happen in that space. But it's been awesome doing 5 seasons of commentary for them. That's through SimSpeed. Logitech is on the last. Tomorrow night will be its last round of the qualifying series, that has just been so cool, just talking to a bunch of the guys. I've got stories, to sort of say what my plans were for the year. And then Logitech sort of broke that down and went, no, we want you. So that's Wednesdays at the moment. It should transition to Wednesdays once a month. I think the next round is March the 13th. Formula Racing Group will be having me doing all of their commentary for the year. Where all that lands. Gee whiz. I think that's everything. Scops is the other one. Yeah, so Scops and Scops
you're going to be on Scops currently. Too.
Yeah.
So if you're doing all Scops supports, what's that? That's only 3 nights in a row, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
between that and actual Scops.
I mean, I can't do the Friday night stuff, but definitely the Saturday night stuff I can. And then the Sunday afternoon stuff where it doesn't clash with other bits and pieces. So yeah, the schedule's really tightening up, but basically, and then I'm podcasting with Mez most Mondays. We actually took this Monday off, which was really good because I was sick anyway. So, Fixed Indie is what I've been doing on a Tuesday night every second week at the moment. This week's an off week. Wednesdays is either FRG or Logitech. Thursday nights is Vets. One of the best parts, though, about stepping down from Vets is I'll be doing race control for Vets next season, which I'm really looking forward to stepping back in the race control chair. And when there was not something on leading up until now, I was doing on the Wednesday night, I was actually doing some race control for Southern Cross for their touring car series.
Yeah.
Friday nights is actually my D&D night with my wife, which is basically our date night to make sure that we do spend time together each week. Saturdays, I'm so keen for cricket season to be over just because how busy I am at the moment, and I hate that because I'm gonna miss it when it's gone. But yeah, Saturdays is cricket, and then Sundays is the myriad of series that all shuffle around on a Sunday. So basically my off nights is like Tuesday night. So
which you're here recording this podcast, so
yeah.
Today's Tuesday, isn't it? I forget sometimes.
Yeah, man, I'm my headspace at the moment. I'm so delirious just with this cold. So
yeah, mate, that's a huge schedule. Like that's a fairly big commitment to undertake, I imagine. But okay, well, let's say I first come across your commentary probably back in Sim Racing World days. I would say, how has just how do we go about phrasing this question? How has it start again? How different has it been going from those broadcasts that you were on in early days and now moving up to someone like SimSpeed? Is getting into a broadcaster like SimSpeed, so I'm going to throw a 2-part question at you now, is that something you're reaching out to them, or are they coming to you?
I reached out to them, but they also put a post out saying, "Hey, we've got new series coming on board. We need a couple extra commentators. Is there anyone interested?" And I messaged, I replied to the post straight away, got an instant response. And Jay Kennedy says, "Yep, we know exactly who you are. Don't need to send us a video. We know exactly who you are. We know what you can do. Are you available these nights?" So that conversation was really nice and easy, which I loved.
Yep.
It's a shame the way that SRW ended. I don't get on with their management, but I do get on with the drivers, and I do get on with the people that were in and around it. I have a lot of love, in particular, for Nathan Howard, who he was on a holiday whilst we were living on the Central Coast and come and visited, and we actually got to meet in person, which was really, really cool. Got to meet his wife as well. He's just a lovely, lovely guy, and he's putting it together as he goes along. And there is a difference between going from a broadcaster of that level. He's learned so much, and he puts in so much work behind the scenes to get to where he is, but he cannot make up for 10 years worth of experience.
No.
As for working with Jay and the SimSpeed crew, is there a step up? Absolutely. But it's not as big a step as you might think. They make it, if you know what you're doing and you know how to hand off, or you're willing to take criticism and you're willing to take feedback, they make it so easy. Jay puts in a ridiculous amount of this is his job, right? For Jay.
Yeah.
From SimSpeed. So he's working at camera packs, he's looking at cars, he's looking at ways to improve the broadcast. Some of the stuff that has not come out yet from SimSpeed that will do in the future, oh my god. The stuff that Jay does, he's taught himself new programs and new ways to push the apron and to improve things. And that's what it takes to be his standard. He's working directly with iRacing, and a lot of people don't know that. But that's what it takes to push the bubble, to be working with those sorts of people. So there is no one else you can really sit down and compare to that, except for Luke from Race Stars TV. He was awesome to work with as well. I've worked with him on FRG and the Logitech series last year, and I'm really kind of upset that he's going away, because he was another one, and I think competition makes everyone better. So it was really, really good to have him around.
I was going to ask, sorry, just to butt in, just on Luke, he is not broadcasting anymore, is that correct?
I believe so. I'm not sure of the reasons for that. All I know from his personal side is that he was doing too much, and he wasn't. He's got a young family, and he wanted to spend more time with them, and he wasn't. So it's difficult in that. I'm not interested in kids. I'm not interested in family and those sorts of things. So it's something I'll not be able to appreciate, but I can understand why he stepped away. But he's just a cool dude. We were just chatting.
He had some unique broadcasts, didn't he? Just the way he was the one that was he doing the flyovers in Microsoft Sim?
Yes, he was.
Yes. Yeah.
But that just shows you the passion level.
Lots of different ideas, didn't he? Yeah, like that he come up with his broadcast, and he was a one-man sort of band there for a long time.
He is,
too.
Yeah.
No,
he's unique, and the relationship that formed between myself and Formula Racing Group, I have him to thank for. Sure, Rue's, been a part of Premier Endurance League, and he's seen my work there, but at the same time, they were looking for a broadcaster. They were looking for a commentator one night because someone was short, and Luke threw my name into the hat, and that got that door open for me. So I'll always be thankful to Luke for that, because that's created some really cool opportunities this year. But yeah, no, just a professional broadcasting group can be difficult to work with. For those of you who don't know, top level broadcasting groups, there's always chatter going on through your headset. Some of it's from the director. If you've ever been a part of or seen anything to do with TV broadcast, that's just how they do it, right? You've got to be able to tune it out and listen to the bits and pieces that you need to listen to. There's a lot of commentators that will listen to something being said to them, nearly like the Will Ferrell movie where he's the TV anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And
Anchorman.
Yeah, Anchorman. He's literally reading from the teleprompter. There are people out there that commentate, they hear something in their ear, and the only way they can respond and deal with that is to say exactly what that person says. And it's funny. It's really, really funny, because the audience can't hear that person talking.
But you can pick up on it if you're sat next to them.
You can actually hear it. Like, sometimes there'll be some commentators and they'll be on a thought train, and then all of a sudden their speaking will slow all the way down. and you're like, what is going on here? That's probably someone talking to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there's bits and pieces. Like, one of the biggest things I put to Jay all the time is, have you noticed anything? Is there anything that you think that I could be doing better? And a higher tier worth of broadcasting can pick up on little bits and pieces. Like, Jay's constantly telling me to let a race breathe. It doesn't need to go at 1,000,000 miles an hour the whole race, and people will enjoy it more because it slows down and we get a moment to appreciate some of the action that's gone on. So, there's there is a step up in terms of standard. It's sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's in your face, but it's the subtle things that really, really make a broadcast tick. And Jay for me does not get enough credit ever. No one will ever give him enough credit, because the amount of stuff that he does for everyone is just ridiculous. So
yeah, he's definitely you hear a name that I've heard mentioned a fair bit, but I haven't had any personal dealings with Jay. But sim speed, at least from a consumer, like I guess I'm a consumer watching a lot of sim speed broadcast. Is it fair to say that they're sort of like on the verge of a business, a full-time business, or is this still something that Jay and the people working behind the scenes are still managing outside of their 9 to 5s? Like, where are we at? And then also, you as a commentator, like, is there potential for you to earn, anything from this aspect of iRacing whilst you're doing all this commentary?
That's a really loaded question. There's a lot in that. No, so for Jay, you're asking the wrong person. Is this all he does? I think so. Is the only answer I can give you, because I've never actually asked him about it. My understanding is that, yeah, I think it is, but I think he does more broadcast than go on SimSpeed, and that's the key, really. He does work with iRacing in the background of some of the iRacing stuff, and that's really, really cool. And we constantly talk about it. What can we do? What are they doing? What can we do better? And that's really, really cool to get some of the insights about what's going on over there. But for me, from a commentating perspective, I have done a road racing motorcycle event for my parents as a state title, and I think I undercharged, but I also felt greedy charging the amount that I did for that event. If you were paying me that for an event every weekend, I would still, I think, have to be working 9 to 5, doing stuff. Not 9 to 5, but I would still have to be doing something. Could I be doing my current job part-time and doing commentating? It'd be tight, but yes. Yeah, I think there is a world that's possible, but I'd have to find more gigs outside of sim racing, I think, to flick that on. Sim racing's really... there would be too much going on all the time, and I would never get enough time to just chill out and be me, and I think that's a big, big issue. The events lifestyle of a supercars commentator, that's a dream world, isn't it? I would love to do that. I really, really would. But I think one of the biggest things, and it's sort of a focal point this year, is I would love to get in contact. I'd love to reach out to, say, like Crofty, to Scaife, like to any of those guys. Can I just come be an intern? I will pay my own way. I do not care what it takes. I just want to come and be a fly on the wall. And just learn what you guys are researching, learn how you guys are talking in pre-prod, what does it take, how much, what are you guys doing to make you guys that standard, because it would be a dream come true. It's a dream that for me is probably 10 years in the making, because I consider everything that I've done from the esports world to be incredibly important to who I am as a person and who I am as a commentator. But I find a hard way for me, who I am, to be able to tick all of those boxes off and survive. And I think one of the things that doesn't get discussed is neurodivergence. I think one of the big issues that I have within that is my ability to stay on topic and work hard enough, and that's something I've got to solve. And I'm hopefully, I've actually got my appointment to be diagnosed, hopefully tomorrow, which we'll have fingers crossed, and to see what goes on within that space. But burnout is a bigger problem for me than it is for most other people. And
Yeah.
that's something I've had to manage my entire adult life without knowing what I'm managing. So, dude, that's if I could
Yeah.
sit here and say, you know, we perfect world, yes. Would I do this full time? Absolutely, there would be. But there's so much nuance to that that I just think I would not take it on without having a backup. And my current job would work with that. I've already had discussions about that. If that was to be a thing, yes, that would work. But yeah, it's a very difficult bridge to cross.
Yeah. And I mean, the reality is we're not there yet. But you certainly hear about broadcasters and such, particularly in Europe and things like that are having that level of sustainability for employees
Sure,
or a
but
business model themselves.
the biggest thing for those sorts of people is look at the population densities.
Yeah.
Look, if I'm sitting in Eastern France and I'm commentating, I can cover Spain all the way through to Russia, right? And there are so many. If I'm doing that time slot, I can be doing a Spanish league as I'm waking up. You know, a Spanish league earlier in the afternoon because they've got an earlier time slot. I can be doing a French league a little bit after that. As soon as the Spanish league goes on, I can flick straight over to a French league. Then I can jump over to a German league. Then I can jump over to an Eastern European league. So for those guys, there is the opportunity to do that. And the population density is there such that they've got the driver quality, that the money and the backing is there. We just don't have the numbers. We don't have the financial backing for me to be able to do that. If I could nail my own personal marketing and create a revenue stream on the side for me like that, and I'm not capable of doing it personally, I'm not capable of doing that without some significant changes in the way that I go about things. So there would be an opportunity for one, maybe two people in Australia to do that, you know, full time, and it's just I would rather see that go to somebody else. Like Dan Yeaman is actually a really, really good example. I would love to see him and some of his team get paid for the administration duties they do across a number of leagues before I get paid.
Yes. Yeah. So we're not going to be able to count on a Scott Rankin live Twitter race update account anytime soon.
I mean, I'd have to get to the race once I'm at the racetrack. Like the biggest problem I have is managing myself. To be perfectly honest, like, you know, I'm being very critical of myself here, but you know, it's one of the things that I wanted to do this year was something along those lines. I'm not capable of doing it, not the schedule I have, and I need so much more relaxation and rebound time than other people do. So,
well, like we don't need to be critical of yourself anymore. Let's talk about a big success that you had recently, which was getting to commentate. Was it the Thai GT3 League in real
oh
world?
my god, yes, my lord. You mean me fangirling for 6 hours of commentary a day? Yes.
How did that all come about, mate? Like, that's interesting. Obviously Thailand's it's a step out from what you're used to with in here in Australia. And how does it come about? And and then what was that like to work with an entirely new team? Was it just one race weekend?
No. So we've worked on. So the partnership got kickstarted through. There's a lot of people who will say this name and they'll go, "Oh man, I hate that you're bringing that name up again." But I do actually have to say a big thank you to the guys from 24/7 Race Control and broadcasting everything that they were doing, because John Hancock. I was just about to say I forget his last name, but I've remembered it. Set up the relationship, and he was doing the race control for Speed Cafe, and they were going, we need another commentator, we need comms to make sure that we got this covered. So he set that connection up through Speed Cafe. And then once the door was open, I kicked that thing down, apparently. I blew the door off its hinges, according to the people that I'm talking to. So that put me in contact with a guy by the name of Troy Williams, who works at Speed Cafe and is currently the head of GT4 Australia, which is really, really cool. So there's been some cool opportunities as a part of that. But he put me in touch. We connected, and then the first round of the Speed Cafe series was the same weekend as the Australian Grand Prix for Formula One.
Yep.
And I get this message from Troy, and it's basically, holy cow, we've got Aston Martin head of racing, sitting in the hotel room watching this race. Oh my god, this is amazing! And he's saying, "How is this guy not doing international racing?" And I'm just sitting there going, "Haha, that's a really cool compliment." But he doesn't mean that. He's just saying that to be nice. Well, that ticked over, and then Speed Cafe had this relationship with the Thailand Super Series where they're being brought on board to help with the English commentary, and they had a couple of English commentators over there. They have no idea what racing is. They just know English, and they American raised Thai descendancy, basically. So that was how their connection was formed, and it just wasn't working for them. The racing was boring. The English stream was getting no views. They brought us on, and originally the deal was for us to just do the GT3 stuff, and that was it. They were going to be covering everything else across the weekend. Well, we did the first GT3 race. That's it. Can you guys come back, and can you guys do every category all year long? That's all we want you guys to be doing the whole time. Sure. I mean, what, are you going to say no? $1 million race cars. You're inviting me to talk about $1 million race. I'm not going to say no. Are you out of your mind? So yes, we said yes. And that relationship just kept growing. I've now been down to look at GT4 cars in Australia firsthand. I've met some really, really cool people. Sat in a McLaren 570S, which was, if I had a bucket list and considered all these things, was probably on that bucket list, but never thought would actually happen. So that got to happen. Met some amazing people, and we were hopeful that we might get over to Bang Sen to do the street course race this year, but that's just financially, it's just not going to happen. So we're targeting to actually go over next year, hopefully, and commentate live from Thailand, which, oh boy, I'd love to make that happen.
Well, either way, it's pretty impressive
so
that you
cool.
managed to get there from, all the, and you have put in a huge effort in terms of iRacing commentary in the last 12, 24 months. So you get that type of, it's acknowledgement, deserved acknowledgement at the end of the day. But, is it, so there is obviously some ongoing chatter there in the background to continue doing real world commentary?
We're confirmed. We'll be doing the commentary for that series again this year. For every round, every race, basically. So it's all locked in. It's all confirmed. Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty impressive, I would say, mate. So congratulations on making it that far. But you never know where the next opportunity may come from, by the sounds of it. And one thing you're doing incredibly well is networking with a lot of different people. So
do I? The way that I approach it, I guess it goes back to the commentary thing, and giving tips and advice to people who are getting into commentary. First and foremost, have fun with it, because if you're having one of the things that I got told very, very early on was smile whilst you're commentating. Even if you are having a terrible day, even if it's people can hear it. Talk to, set up a recording thing. Audacity, your own computer has got recording software on it, right? These days, you've got a phone. Record voice clips of yourself. Record a 5-second voice clip of yourself saying the same phrase, smiling, frowning, and with a neutral expression. And you can hear the difference. You absolutely can hear the difference. Smile. Be relaxed. Be happy. Be enjoying what you're doing, and it'll naturally come across. The experience will happen, but it only happened because I was enjoying myself from the get-go, so...
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, it's obviously a skill learned. You need to get in there, and you need to probably not suffer the embarrassment, but just take the learnings on that everyone goes through, and then work and build, as you mentioned before. You got to always be able to look at yourself back. I think is a good.
Be open to criticism. One of the favorite things I like saying to people about, I have had so many people ask me to teach them oval racing, and one of the first things I've said is be open to criticism. You guys, coming from a road racing perspective, will teach me things that I'd never considered, because my biggest experiences, my biggest wins, and the most amount of time I've spent racing is on oval circuits within the iRacing platform. Nothing will ever beat that, just because of the amount of time I've sunk into it. And there are people with 500 iRating that have taught me something. If you aren't open to the people that are around you, some of the biggest enemies and some of the people that I hated the most in life have taught me the most about myself and about what I can do to improve. And just because I hate them doesn't mean I was not open to receiving criticism from them. I worked a small period of time working for a martial arts billing company of about 18 months, and I learned so much more about personality and what it takes to manage yourself within that company. Ultimately, I wasn't a good fit with the management, and stuff went on there, but I learned so much from the people that were around me that it was just, even though the environment was not good, I still had to take things away. And if you can every single time you're on a track, every time you take a corner, if you're learning the minutest percent of something, you're always improving. There's always focus on the growth, not on the result, is the biggest thing that I struggled with for a period of time, and it's something I've got to get back to.
Yeah, because there's certainly a fair bit of opportunity out there now for people to start getting involved and having a crack at commentary. If I'm sure there's a lot of leagues out there that would appreciate assistance with that in their broadcast. So, but you're quite right that being open to criticism and working out how to critique yourself and move forward is a big part of it. And once you do it a couple of times, as I'm sure you can attest to, you start building in confidence, and then it becomes a less daunting thing, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then also knowing when to go, okay, 95% of what this person has said is wrong, but there was a nugget there is very, very important. And you know, just to sift that out is definitely important. But, I think I'm very hard-headed at times, but I'm very good at reviewing what I've done and coming to very, very good objective conclusions about, what I should have done or what I could have done better. So yeah, sorry, I'm really struggling. Like, I'm struggling in terms of the health, but which is frustrating. You have no idea how annoyed I am that I can't commentate tomorrow, because again, I love it so much. And yes, it's the coolest series in Australia at the moment, and they're going the furthest with what they're doing. But I love working with the crew, and that's what that's about, and that's, I think, why I've been so successful.
Yeah, getting involved with a good bunch of people, it definitely helps the situation out. Look, we keep these to around about an hour, these interviews, but I can't let you go without first allowing yourself the opportunity to give your own podcast a bit of a plug, but also, how many podcasts are you now doing?
So I want to go back and sit down with the guys from Locked On Lads again. I've been on a podcast once with them before, and to me, it's just fun, right? It's just sitting down, it's talking mates, it's talking games. Like, I'm sure I'll be chatting with my video game exploits that I've been doing lately, and other non iRacing style of things,
Yep.
which is really, really cool. I like that aspect about their podcast. It's just sitting down and just talking about gaming, with an iRacing focus a little bit. So a shout out to the Locked On Lads guys. They're just cool guys to hang around with. As for my podcast, it's called You Can't Park There, with 3 H's on the R. You can find us on Facebook. There's no podcast this week. We decided to take a break, which was, again, like I said, handy, because I could not have podcasted yesterday, and I probably shouldn't have podcasted tonight, but I love talking too much, so here I am. So big shout out to Summer Mazomo for coming on board with that. And that really started out of us just sitting down and talking after vets one night. We basically just said, oh man, we should really start a podcast to really chat about these things. Oh, I really want to start a podcast too. Oh, you do? Oh, hey, what are you doing Monday night? Should we just podcast on Monday night? Monday night sounds good. Yep, cool. That's a podcast. That's how that came together. So, and it turned out that we both had similar ideas for how we wanted the podcast to happen, and we both wanted to talk about similar topics, and it was just really natural. That just all happened of its own accord. So Mez has been so awesome to work with, so I can't say big enough shout out to him, because he does everything for that podcast and I just show up. So big shout out to Mez.
except for last night where you didn't show up.
Well, we both need to be fair, so I'm glad.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a big week for him, I imagine, because
he's so nervous.
Round 1 of Scops. Yeah.
He doesn't say it, but you can, because I've been working around him for long enough now, you can hear it.
It'd be nervousness and a bit of excitement, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure the guys there at AOG will put on a pretty good show.
And his work ethic, and Dan, I cannot. One of the people, because we get to talk about Jay Kennedy all the time from SimSpeed, but if we're moving into the thank yous, I don't think anyone who sim races understands how much work Dan Yeaman does, because he's an admin. He's a lead runner. He sets up races. He designs rule sets. He tweaks with things. He tinkers with things. He does broadcasting. He's our broadcaster for the V8 Veteran Series. So everything that we said about Jay and him setting up stuff, well, Dan's also doing bits and pieces of that as well, including fighting with a new computer that he put together for the season of vets that blew up on night one. He was not happy about that. That guy does not get enough credit. That guy does not get enough pay. The fact that he's getting no pay, he should be getting pay, because he's just an amazing person to be around, and he will figure out a way to help you. Just the people that I've met probably over the last couple of weeks of doing podcasting, I want to say big shout out to them. Mike Korolev in particular. Chatting to Mike Korolev sort of reinvigorated my love for sim racing and for what we do and why we do it. So that was such a good chat. Bo Albert was amazing as well. Hearing from someone who suffers from the imposter syndrome, as much as I do, was huge. You know, for somebody who's gone to and can sit down on a global scale and say, yes, I am in the top 50 drivers in the world in 2 different categories. The fact that he still has imposter syndrome says that any of us can suffer from it, and that, you know, it is what it is, and mental health is so important to manage. So, you know, I think, yeah, man, I'm just thankful for the position that we live in, really. I'm just thankful for the people I get to talk to, the people I get to talk about, and the guys that show up and race every week.
Yeah. I'm a fan. I've just about ticked off. I know I have ticked off all the episodes so far. I did finish off the episode with Bo Albert today. It is interesting to hear someone like Bo, who, you know, is one of the better known Australian sim racers, talk about some of the issues that he's had, because, you know, his success is probably not just limited to track. It's also his YouTube channels.
He's a master at being upside down too.
Yep.
What a guy.
So he's, you know, he's successful. I would classify him as successful on many different levels, but he doesn't see, as you suggested with his imposter syndrome, he's not seen it that way himself. So it is interesting to hear people talk about that, and not give themselves the credit that they probably deserve.
Yeah. That's, yeah. And, you know, it's just going to be such a, I'm just so thankful. Like, there's just so much I'm going to be able to do and be in contact with, and stories I'm going to get to tell this year, man. Like, if this is probably the last anecdote I give you of the night. I sat on a plane trip home writing down all the people I wanted to talk to and the things I wanted to ask them this year, and I filled up 7 or 8 pages before the lady sitting next to me turned to me and go, "Are you starting a podcast?" I went, "I might. We'll see how this goes." There's a couple of people I really want to interview and chat together, but like, I filled out so many pages, and I got the opportunity. The older I've gotten, my dad's really quiet, but my mum's really loud and a little bit in your face, and we had clash sometimes. But my dad, I never really talked to my dad growing up as much. But the older I've gotten, the more and more I've talked to him, because he's just such a fountain of information. And Dad gave me a whole bunch of tips about commentating, and my dad's not done the same amount of hours that I've done commentating. He's not done the same amount of different topics that I've had to talk about, and I took something away from talking with my old man that has really added such a different aspect to my commentary this year that, you know, I can't say a big enough of a thank you to my father at the moment. So
that's awesome. Look, yeah, I think we will wrap it up, mate. I just want to say a massive thank you for giving up your time and coming on and having a chat. And I think it's definitely got into some deep topics of conversation there. But you know, I think it'll be great. People listen to it and enjoy it. But yeah, once again, mate, just a huge thank you from me. And you come here and you're not well, and you sacrifice your own podcast.
Oh, dude,
I'm going to claim that.
I'm having fun. Like I said, if I'm having fun, I will do it. Right? It's just. Yeah. I mean, obviously, this sort of a voice can't go on the top level Australian sim broadcasting, but I wouldn't have missed this for the world. You know, it's like, I'm sick. I'm really under the weather. And yeah, I've had to mute my microphone several times to nearly cough up a lung in the background. So yeah, I still wouldn't have missed this for the world. You know, it's so much fun talking to people about their life, their story, what's going on with them. So, and I don't get to share my own very often. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought. It might be interesting to have yourself sit in the other seat for a change. You're usually in this position that I'm in.
I think, yeah, there's some really there's stuff here that we haven't even covered that is really interesting, and that I don't get to share very often. So maybe there's an episode 2, maybe question mark. No, we'll be back with
There's
iRacing
always
at some point again, Dean.
Yeah, but there'll always be an opportunity for episode 2, Scott. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, thanks again, mate. We'll wrap this up right here. But look, best of luck with your podcast and all your upcoming calls.
Mate, thank you very much. And like I've said to everyone, big shout out to everyone who does anything in the sim racing community. You have no idea how much it means to me to see this community continue to grow. And yeah, if you've got something positive to say, if you've ever got a question related to commentating, related to neurodivergence, spicy brain, or neurospicy, are the new terms coming out of it, feel free to hit me up. Always keen to chat. There was a couple people who have asked me about it in the last couple of weeks that have led to some really light bulb moments for them. So I'm always happy to try and help out people. Anyone that needs something, you know where I am.
There you go. Alrighty, mate. Absolute pleasure. Thanks very much. And there you have it, guys. Thanks for tuning in to episode number 6 of the Sim Racing in Focus podcast. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Scott Rankin. If you'd like to find out some more about the show, you can always head online and look at simracinginfocus.blog website. Little bits and pieces of content there, and hopefully a few more articles and stuff hitting that site soon. Subscribe to the newsletter while you're there. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of which will be linked in the show notes. But if you feel so inclined, give the podcast a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I've seen some people have already done that. Thank you so much. Definitely love hearing from everybody and about the show, and hopefully we'll keep making this more and more entertaining for you and keep chugging along with plenty more interviews along the way. That's everything that we've got for tonight's episode, so it's bye for now.